A brother's fortune. The swine! I watched him put away 2 portions of kung pao chicken, 8 dumplings, and 6 spring rolls, and the bastard still has room for dessert. Mom let him have 2 scoops of black sesame ice cream, and while she was in the restroom, Dad let him have a 3rd. Can I have one too? I asked Dad. Absolutely not, he says. You heard what the doctor said. Your BMI is too high. Archie laughs and sticks out his tongue at me. There are remnants of gray goo on his braces, and I squeeze the chopsticks in my fist until I feel them crack. Mom returns from the restroom just as my little brother swallows the last spoonful of his dessert. Dad let Archie have more ice cream while you were gone, I tell her. Snitch, says Archie. Indeed, Mom agrees. Next time, Brian, think twice before you tattle. You're in middle school now, and it would be nice if you started making some friends. Dad chuckles, and Archie laughs with the glee of the pardoned. I want to chuck my chopsticks at him. 10 extra points if one gets stuck in his throat and he chokes and dies. This isn't fair, I say. This place wasn't even supposed to have dessert. It's why I chose to come here in the first place. They didn't even serve fruit last year. Don't worry, bud, says Dad. We have bananas in the freezer. I'll make you a nice cream when we get back home, okay? With berries and peanut butter, just the way you like it. What I would like. Here you go. The waitress interrupts me to place the check and a bowl with 4 fortune cookies on the table. Thank you for your patronage. Come again, she says cheerfully. Yes, Brian, you were saying, Dad asks me after the waitress leaves. Mom also turns to me. Now that I have their undivided attention, I can't say what I want to say anymore. I watch Archie. He has his sticky ice cream fingers all over the fortune cookies and is inspecting each one in turn as if he has X-ray vision. If his fortune ends up being the best one, I'll be very upset. What I would like, dear parents, is for my younger brother to stop being the golden child. I won't say it aloud, but I'm thinking it. I've been thinking it all my life. I want dibs on the first fortune cookie, I say, and lock eyes with my brother. He already chose one. I want the one Archie is holding. Nah, Archie protests. This is sugar, and the doctor said, tell him, Mom. No cookie for you, Brian, says Mom. Janice, come on, says Dad. A fortune cookie won't make a difference. That thing is mostly air, anyway. Mom shrugs and turns to me. Can't you choose another one? No, I want that one, I say and point at my brother. His ears turn red. Moom, whines Archie. Come on, Arch, be a good sport, Dad tells him. It's Brian's birthday, after all. It's one of the only triumphs I have ever had over my brother. I reach out my open palm and wait for Archie to hand over his fortune cookie. He does. Mom, Dad, and Archie then each choose a different cookie from the bowl, and we all open them at the same time. I part the halves of crunchy pastry to get to the note inside, and the note is the best birthday present I could have asked for. Neat, I tell my family. Mine says you will attract wealth and abundance. Mom and Dad cheer at my good fortune. Mom wants to share her fortune next, and when I turn my head to pay attention to her, catastrophe hits. My little brother, scrawny, spoiled, annoying as shit Archie stands up, reaches across the table, and grabs the 2 halves of my cookie. I'm too slow to react. Archie stuffs my cookie into his mouth, chews, and swallows it down in a matter of seconds. I am gobsmacked. Archie then gives me his classic shit-eating grin and runs his tongue along his braces. "Yum," he says. "Thank you for your good fortune, big brother." Mom and Dad laugh. Maybe they think this is funny. Maybe they know I was about to blow a fuse and are trying to release some tension in advance. Maybe they are just as surprised as I am and don't know how else to react. I don't tear. The second my senses return to me, I launch myself over the table, ready as I'll ever be, to inflict as much pain as possible on the biggest source of misery in my life. 30 years later, the new doorbell is either broken or it rings too far inside the house for me to hear. I ring and wait. Nothing. I ring again, still nothing. I go around the house to look through the living room window. The front yard looks terrible, but at least the living room is clean and all set up for the upcoming wake. I knock on the window, more nothing. I won't call him. He never answers anyway, and if I text him, it takes him an average of 27 hours to reply if he replies at all, that is. I return to the front door and don't take my finger off the buzzer until someone finally opens the door. He looks like shit, albeit slightly better than he did the last time I saw him. His alcoholism used to give him a perpetual flush and inexplicable outbreaks. Not to mention breathing problems. I watched Stranger Things with my girls when it came out, and the term mouth breather reminded me of him instantly. He's no longer a mouth breather, from what I can tell. The last remnants of his addiction can only be found in his overgrown gut, but the rest of him has lost so much weight that he fits in my high school graduation suit without a problem. "Nice suit," I tell him. Archie smiles. He is as pale as a ghost, but his eyes are swollen and so incredibly red, they seem almost purple. "Thanks. It's my brother's. He's the one with good taste," he says. Just as I thought he was all cried out, the purple eyes got wet again. I throw my arms around my brother, hoping he won't cry anymore. He cried enough, the poor bastard. It's over. No more crying from either of us. But still, he cries. He holds me tight, tighter than he ever did before, and he cries. I bench 10 reps of 180 pounds on my weekdays, and my little bro is holding me tight enough to turn my spine concave. I want to ask him if he started working out, but it seems inappropriate. Another time. We'll have plenty of time to catch up and crack jokes. The future looks comfortable. I wait for Archie's sobs to die out before I pat him on the back and let him go. He left 2 wet spots on my trench coat too small and close together to have come from his eyes, but I don't hold that against him. After all, his mom just died. Our mom. Whatever. Archie wipes his eyes with the back of his hand and looks over my shoulder. Is Sophie looking for a place to park? This I didn't look forward to. This part of the conversation. Yeah, about that. Sophie can park in the backyard. I kept the spot next to Mom's car clear for her. He's still calling it Mom's car, even though he's been the only one driving it for the last 4 years. I follow Archie into the house. He keeps talking. I didn't get to restore the front yard to its former glory yet. So sorry about that. We stuck mostly to the backyard, with Mom's wheelchair and all. It looks great, by the way. I paved most of it and set up a pavilion on the remaining greenery. I replaced the small gate too, so cars can come and go with no trouble. Archie turns to me. Call her. Tell her there's free parking back here. He looks expectant. Giddy, almost. If I didn't know any better, I'd say he looks proud. Finally, he managed to see something through without messing it up, repurposing the backyard. Sophie isn't coming, Archie. And neither are the girls. It's just me. Archie's face falls. They aren't coming? A tiny heart starts pounding in my temple. Who does this drunkard think he is to criticize my family? No, I tell him. Sophie has a work thing. She's in Copenhagen until next week. And both my girls are at camp. Isabella is in debating, and Dawn is in theater. Archie isn't getting it. Yeah, but it's Mom's funeral. Yeah, well, she wasn't exactly a staple in my family's life. My daughters only met her a handful of times, and she called Sophie a slut the very first time they met. So, there you have it. You'll have to excuse my wife and daughters for not dropping everything to come say goodbye to her. Archie shakes his head. I was there, Brian. Mom never called Sophie a slut. She just asked her if she was pregnant. Same thing. How is that the same thing? You guys announced you were getting married after just 3 months of dating. So, what's your point? My point is, Isabella was born not even half a year later. You're vilifying Mom for no reason. She wasn't trying to insult Sophie. She was just inquiring about the facts. I elbow my brother to the side to get to the stairs. The passage to my room has been narrowed down by the ramp that was installed for Mom's wheelchair. My childhood bedroom is on the first floor. I just hope Archie and Mom didn't turn it into a supply closet over the years. Or worse, into a game room for Archie. He already has the biggest room in the house, because why not? Golden child blueprint. Archie scurries after me and tries grabbing my carry-on out of my hand. I don't let him take it. I'll be damned if I'll allow my kid brother to play host with me in my own house. Archie feels that he's upset me. He follows me to my bedroom, stuttering through topics he thinks would be more pleasant to talk about. The list of people who promised to attend the funeral, relatives, friends of the family, even people we went to school with. He mentions a wasp nest he had to remove from the attic, and that he finally found our grandpa's long-lost collection of World War I memorabilia. By the time we reach my old bedroom, Archie starts telling me about his plans to landscape the front yard. Don't worry about that, I interrupt him. I'll take care of it after you move out. My bedroom looks the same. There is the distinct fragrance of freshly washed sheets in the air. The nightstand is newly dusted, and so is my old writing desk. Nothing has been moved or changed, not even the saucy posters above my bed. I am home. Archie stopped in the doorway. He doesn't say anything. He just looks at me as if I've grown a second head. I feared it would come to this, but the sooner I rip the Band-Aid off, the quicker he can get over it. May 8, 2004, I say. The day of our father's funeral. Mom called a family meeting with the two of us, because she had to rewrite her will and asked us point blank, which one of us wants the house, and which one of us wants Dad's savings account. Brian. I said, I want the house. Mom agreed to it. I'm to get the house. You agreed too. Hell, you were more than happy to end up with Dad's savings. Back then, there was more in that account than what the house was worth. That's not true. That old tactic, huh? You getting cold feet now does not change the facts, little brother. Archie's ears turn red. You want facts? He enters my room and approaches me slowly. I'm not scared of this shithead. I have 40 pounds of muscle on him, not to mention a clear head and boxing classes under my belt. I'll give you the facts, Brian. Clearly, you hit your head sometime between graduating from law school and attending our mother's funeral. Isn't it convenient that you forgot? You were neither smart nor talented enough to go to a prestigious university on a scholarship. Take one more step and I'll start swinging. Might stain the suit. Who paid off your student loan, Brian? With what money? There was plenty of money left in Dad's savings account for you. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Archie pauses long enough for me to reply. What am I supposed to reply with? No, I am not fucking kidding you right now. I'm not about to enable his silly tantrum. I'm not Mom. Our mother has had cancer for over 5 years, Brian. 5 years. That's over 2,000 days of battling a deadly sickness. She couldn't work. I couldn't work. Someone had to stay here and take care of her. Care costs money, Brian. Oh, so that's why you didn't work for years. Because Mom was sick. How altruistic of you. So many employers were aching to hire a chronic alcoholic, but you were out here choosing the hard life. Archie's mouth falls agape. He's probably shocked that I called his bluff. After all, the rest of the family has seen him as a hero for the longest time. If he thought he could stay in my house after Mom is gone, he has another thing coming. Mom's last Facebook posts pop into my head. Oh, I remember now, I tell him. Of course, the money's gone. You spent it on travels. Archie starts shaking with rage. His ears are almost the same color as his cried-out eyes. I took one trip with our dying mother. One. She wanted to visit Europe before she died, so I took her to Greece and Italy. Sounds like 2 trips to me. We stayed a total of 10 days. Must have been expensive. A 10-day trip in 5 years, Brian? Are you seriously going to hold this over my head? No, why should I? It was your money. Archie starts pacing around the room. He runs his fingers through his hair, which, despite his otherwise pitiful physique, is as lush and full as it was in his teenage years. Damn him. I inherited my hair from my dad's side of the family. I started balding in my mid-20s, and by the time I reached 30, I had no choice but to start shaving it all off. All right, so here's how things are going to go. I'll give you a month. 2, if you ask nicely. I have a good friend in tenancy law. When you find your own place, let me know so I can get you in contact with him. He'll go over the lease with you and level things out in case your landlord tries to screw you over. What do you say? Archie stops pacing around the room, but he doesn't look at me. He takes his hands out of his hair. I say you can stay here for 2 more months, but the girls and I will start moving in as soon as possible. Sophie wants us to be completely settled before Christmas, and I think that's a good idea. Moving during the holidays sounds like a pain. You already have a house, says Archie. He is a lot calmer than he was a minute ago. Good. He sees reason sooner than I gave him credit for. Being sober changed him for the better in many ways. There are many, many comebacks I could give him as to why that is irrelevant. So what if I already have a house? Mom and Dad's house is larger and better. The neighborhood is safer. The front and backyards are big enough for both my dogs. The schools in the area are very good, and both I and Sophie have the opportunity to work from here. I have a family to take care of. Archie does not. And despite all this, there's one reason that trumps all the others. May 8, 2004, Mom left this house to me and only me. I've seen the will. You've seen the will. Our family lawyer, Mr. Sachs, has the will in his possession and will execute it as soon as I ask him to. I'm sorry about this, brother, but as of now, this is my house, and I decide who lives here and who doesn't. I let my carry-on at the foot of my bed and pat Archie on the shoulder on my way out of the room. I am hungry. I should fix myself a sandwich before the rest of the party shows up for the wake. I'm past the doorframe when Archie decides to speak again. November 32, he says. I heard him perfectly. I'm sorry. What? I ask him. November 30, 2022. Mother rewrote her will. I've never seen the original and only found out about it when Mr. Sachs called me to confirm that Mom's worldly possessions hadn't changed over the years. Arch, what are you saying? What are you talking about? Archie looks at me. He is the loser brother, the unattractive one, the family failure, the one who dropped out of high school, never went to college, missed his window of opportunity to settle down with a nice girl, have some kids, find a job, and become a fairly stable, albeit thin, pillar of society, and yet in this room, with this cloying, sickly smell of lavender percolating through my nostrils, like an allergy pathogen, he is the one with the content smile on his face. That shit-eating grin. I'm saying that this is my house, Brian. Mother rewrote her will and left the house to me, and only me. 30 hours after the funeral. I park next to the alley I used to come to during high school to smoke. A homeless guy sits cross-legged on the ground just beyond the alley entry to practice a song on his mandolin. He sucks. I'm at my third cigarette, and it's doing fuck all for my nerves. The wake, the funeral, the reception, 2 days of absolute torture with that backstabbing bastard. The bastard. The absolute bastard. He had Mom's favorite snacks at the wake, recited Mom's favorite poem during the funeral, brought out Dad's last bottle of 40-year-old whiskey during the repast, and poured it to the last drop among the attendees. I wouldn't be surprised if he filled out one of Dad's empty whiskey bottles with the stuff you find for $5 at the local supermarket, the alcoholic shit stain. Everybody there gobbled it all up, the perfect son, the caring, loving, Mother Teresa embodiment of a son, teary-eyed around the clock. I heard a second cousin praise Archie for his selflessness and how impressed she was with the sacrifices he made for our mother. It was a good thing I left the kitchen when I did, because I would have made an indecent suggestion if I hadn't. The house. My house. Mom gave Archie my house because she was bitter and stubborn and didn't want to understand that my family's busy. We couldn't just drop everything and come wipe her ass or roll her up and down the stairs whenever she wanted. We couldn't come by to just spin her around in the backyard. Sorry for having a life, Mom. Sorry for having a wife and kids, Mom. Sorry for having a career and doing my best to be an upstanding citizen like you taught me to be, Mom. I did everything right, everything. And yet, it was me you punished. You gave my house to that loser, you stupid, selfish, narcissistic bitch. I should have finished the job on my 12th birthday. Someone knocks on my passenger side window. It's the hobo. Fuck off. I yell at him through the closed window. Can you give me one of those? My first instinct is to say no, but then I remember I quit smoking over a decade ago. I roll down my passenger side window just enough to hand him my cigarette pack. Get your own lighter, I tell him, and close the window again. I should have kept one last cigarette. This one is almost finished. Where was I? Oh, right. My 12th birthday, the day the swine stole my fortune. The day I gave in to my intrusive thoughts and tried to strangle him. I would have gone through with it too, if Dad hadn't separated us when he did. It's not too late. The mouthful of smoke goes through the wrong pipe. I spray phlegm on the inside of my windshield, and my eyes are stinging. The thought came from nowhere. I am not a violent person. I am not a violent person. I do not wish ill or harm on anybody. Archie's shit-eating grin pops into my head. His weight loss depleted his chubby cheeks to deep wrinkles that go from the sides of his nose to the edges of his mouth. Every time he smiles, the lower half of his face looks like parted theater curtains. And that is exactly what it reveals. Theater, make-believe, a hidden agenda as thick as the Bible. A parasitic existence whose sole purpose is to inflict misery on others. Archie does not deserve that house. Frankly, I don't think he even wants it. He only made Mom give it to him because it was supposed to be mine. The swine always wanted to have what was mine. Why else would he want that huge house? He has nobody. No partner, no kids, not even a pet. If he dies, I'm his next of kin. Everyone saw me leave. Archie insisted I stay another night. Distant relatives pleaded for me to stay too and join them for coffee in the morning. I didn't want to. Everyone heard me excuse myself. I wanted to hit the road and return to my place before the day went dark. I promised Sophie we wouldn't need the dog sitter for more than 2 days. I hugged Archie and all the great aunts I forgot I had and drove off into the sunset. Nobody has any reason to believe I'll hang around. And why would they? I had a beautiful home, full of life, waiting for me, not even 4 hours away. But what if, say, I got tired? I don't want to risk driving while tired. I call my wife in Copenhagen. I call the dog sitter. I'm spending the night at a motel because I don't want to drive back to my brother's. I spend the night at a motel. The next day, I hit the road around noon and reached home late afternoon. When I get home, I get a grief-stricken phone call that my brother has been found dead in the basement of our childhood home. It was murder. The murder weapon was found at the scene of the crime. An investigation is afoot, but nobody finds anything, anywhere. The neighbors haven't seen or heard anything. There are no strange fingerprints, no strange DNA, no one of a kind shoe print that will lead to the killer like they do in cop shows. There are no suspects. Everything is just one big, mysterious tragedy. A tragedy that ends in me getting my house back. I'd never do it, never. But if I did, here's how I'd go about it. I'd recruit a doppelganger. He doesn't have to look like my twin, but the guy should resemble me enough to pass through a motel reception with my ID. Not just any motel reception, but the one at the Marianne. The Marianne Motel and the Pink Orchid are the 2 motels in town that don't have operating surveillance systems in place. The lovely lady I spent yesterday evening with told me this. I asked her if we could go someplace discreet, and she offered up this information on a golden platter. The lady and I visited the Pink Orchid, so that one's out of the question this time around. They've already seen my face. I'd make my double by a duck canvas jumpsuit, Wellington boots, and gardening gloves. Plain old rubber gloves would be too flimsy. My double dresses in my clothes. I then change into the jumpsuit and Wellington boots he's bought. My double checks into the Marianne Motel with my ID and credit card. He has to give both back to me through the motel room window. If he refuses to do this step, I'm calling the whole thing off. I'm storming into the motel and beating him black and blue for stealing from me. It would be his word against mine, and my word has yet to be distrusted. Leave my car in the motel's parking lot. Take public transport back to Mom's house. My house. Put on the garden gloves. Make sure the bus driver doesn't see me. Break into my house. Knock Archie out cold and drag him into the basement. Dad was a hobbyist. The basement is soundproof. This is the step in which Archie dies. But before he dies, I'll make him pay for all the shit he's put me through. I'll indulge. I'll take my sweet time with his sticky fingers and that shit-eating grin. The basement is my toolbox. Dad's trusty claw hammer, the power drill, the hatchet, and Pop's shotgun. It's high time Archie learns that actions have consequences. Break into the safe behind the painting of the waterfall in the attic. If I torture Archie before killing him, I have to make it look like it was a means to get to the immediate valuables. Return to the Marianne Motel for my car, and to make sure my double checks out the next day before noon. Threaten him or something, so he disappears forever. Then I hit the road. Act devastated at the funeral. Act flabbergasted when Mr. Sachs calls to inform me that my house is finally mine. Something explodes against my passenger side window. I flinch, and the smoldering tip of my cigarette jumps and lands on my wrist. It hurts. The hobo laughs. This time, I roll the passenger side window all the way down. What? I ask the hobo. Do you have any change to spare? He asks in return. Do I fucking look like I carry around change to spare? Could come in handy if you're trying to park around here. Then I'd need it myself and couldn't spare any, could I? Hey man, I'm not asking for charity. I am willing to work for it. So, the cigarettes from before were supposed to be a loan. Thanks, but I don't swing that way, I tell him. The guy tips his head back and laughs with glee. To my surprise, he has a full set of teeth. They are mostly white, too. Healthy looking. Without further ado, he props his mandolin against his lower ribs and starts singing a song I've never heard before and would sooner go deaf than want to listen to again. The guy is swinging left and right, and I become aware of two things. First, he is the same height as me. He's built differently, but anyone would look buff in my trench coat. Second, his beard has the same color and texture as mine. It needs a little trim, and his head needs a proper shave, but other than that, no, I'm not going through with it. The plan is full of holes. 1,000,001 things can and will go wrong if I give it a shot. Trying it out would be insane, and I'm not insane. But if I were insane, this guy is perfect. He needs money, food, a shower, and a safe and comfortable place to spend the night. And I need to reinstate order in my destiny. The guy finishes his song and beams at me. I open the glove compartment and reach for my wallet. 5 hours later, Archie comes back to his senses just as I finish tying him up. He looks like a passed-out drunk, with his upper body flopped over the coffee table in front of him, arms outstretched, back in the shape of a question mark. I had to drill 4 rows of holes into the tabletop to position him like this. I pulled the rope through the holes in the table and over his arms in several tight loops. His forearms look like they're wearing corsets. I tied the rest of him to the chair I made him sit on. Lower back-to-back rest, pelvis and thighs to seat, left ankle to left chair leg, right ankle to right chair leg. This is it, the 10-step of my plan. I didn't think I'd have it in me, but the more I look at him, the better this feels. This feels right. I'm righting a wrong in the universe, and I know in my gut that I'm going to get away with it. I'm about to murder my brother, and nobody will ever find out. I'll make sure of it. J. He's stirring. I might have hit his head harder than I should have. I hope I didn't concuss him into amnesia. I want him to recognize me. I want him to know who I am and why I'm doing this. He stops stirring, and I fear he's gone to sleep again. Wake up, I tell him. He doesn't, so I give him a bit of motivation. The bones in his right hand crack like twigs under an elk's hooves. Archie screams like a pig up for slaughter. The hammer left a square-shaped dent on the back of his hand, 1/2 inch deep. Geez, after all the work I put in today, you'd think I shouldn't have this much power left in me. Guess seeing him like this is all the caffeine I need. I said, "Wake up," I tell him. Archie is moaning. He tries to lift himself off the table, to bring his damaged hand to his chest and cradle it protectively. He wiggles into his confines and ends up lifting the coffee table off the ground. "Stop that," I tell him. He doesn't listen. He and the coffee table move left and right, and it bothers me that he isn't getting the picture yet. I sit down on the coffee table and drop the hammer on his left hand. Once, twice, 3 times. Each scream is louder than the last. If I say, "Stop that," you stop that. Understand? He doesn't respond. I don't think he heard me through the pain erupting in his brain. I lift the hammer again. Yes, dear God, yes, I understand. Please. Please, Brian, stop. I drop the hammer on his right middle finger. You're in no position to give me orders, you brat, I tell him. Ammonia permeates the air. He peed himself. I strike his left hand again, as punishment. Brian, stop, please, stop. Please, oh please. Yeah, I think your sticky fingers got the picture. Archie sobbed with his head tucked in between his biceps. Next up is that shit-eating grin. I yank my brother's head back by his luscious hair. He tries to pull out of my grasp, mumbling please and whys and shaking his head left and right in disbelief at what is happening. Hold still, I tell him, but he doesn't. He tries to pull away, and instead of striking his teeth, the hammer hits his eye. God damn it. I didn't want to do anything to his eyes. I wanted him to see. Oh well. At least he still has one good one. More shrieking. And this time, I have unrestrained access to his teeth. Wham! His wailing's cut short by the sudden sound of choking. It's the funniest shit I heard in months. Maybe years. Maybe ever. I let Archie's hair go, and he coils and uncoils the back of his head over the coffee table like a cat that's trying to spit out a fur ball. There's more I could do. Drill nails into him, cut off his tongue, remove bits of him just to see if he can still scream while choking on his own teeth. But I think I'm done. I'm not a violent person. And I'm not cruel either. It's not like I'm enjoying this. I cut Archie's restraints. He rolls off the chair and drops with a heavy thud on the stone floor. I give him a moment to curl in on himself before I put him out of his misery. Grandpa's shotgun is still perched up on the wall. To my knowledge, Dad never fired it, but he liked to keep it in pristine condition, and as with any firearm kept in pristine condition, the proper ammunition is in the drawer closest to it. I didn't even have to open it all the way. I load the shotgun. Archie is weeping with strangled moans on the stone floor. He is holding his less damaged hand against his ruined eye. There is less blood than I expected. I don't want to speak too soon. Archie's good eye is facing away from me, so I guess there goes my wish for him to see me. At this point, I don't even feel the need to be seen anymore. This feels gross. He's too pathetic. I just want to get it over with. I press the end of the shotgun barrel to his temple. Point-blank range. At first, I want to look, but then again, that might not be such a good idea if I still want to catch some shut-eye tonight. I'm tired. Just in case you were wondering, Archie, this is for stealing my fortune. I was supposed to attract wealth and abundance. You took that from me. But today is the day I'm taking it back. I pull the trigger, and the thing ricochets off my chest hard enough to leave a bruise. I hope it will heal by the time police show up to question me about tonight's whereabouts. Why, officers, I was at the Marianne Motel, of course. Did something happen? My brother? What about my brother? I last saw Archie at our mother's funeral. Sure, he was fine, all things considered. No, I don't know of anybody who wanted to harm him. I leave the shotgun on the coffee table. There are brains and fragments of scalp on my Wellingtons and jumpsuit. The sprinkles of red reach up to my sleeves. I hate that I haven't thought of having clean clothes ready for after the deed is done. It's not that bad. I'll manage. I'll find some garden shears here somewhere to cut off the bloody bits of my outfit and burn them in the backyard or something. I still have the lighter from earlier. Better yet, I should burn off the whole suit. I'm pretty sure I saw a laundry line outside with some of Archie's clothes set out to dry. I don't want to risk going to his room to rummage through his wardrobe. The less area I cover, the higher my chances of getting away with this. It's straight to the attic for me to break the safe open. I climb the stairs leading out of the basement and reach for the door handle. This feels surreal. Like I'm home, in my bed, dreaming about doing this one forbidden thing that has been running through my head ever since I was a little kid. And just like in a dream, there are inconsistencies. For one, this was too easy. Too perfect. This plan was madder than the stuff you read about in fiction books, and yet it ran as smoothly as G, and I didn't even break a sweat. Everything that had to go in my favor went in my favor. That never happens unless it's destiny. Second, my hands and sleeves are clean. No specks of red anywhere. Would you look at that? My jumpsuit is clean too. And so are my Wellingtons. Where did the blood and brain matter go? Chuck, chuck. The action on Granddad's shotgun gets pumped behind me. This isn't real. It can't be. I'm dreaming. My alarm clock will ring any second now to wake me up for work. And then I hear it. Clear as day, the empty shell hits a wooden stair behind me. The empty shell from the bullet I fired into my brother's temple. I turn around slowly and stare into Archie's shit-eating grin. It's regenerating alongside the rest of his mangled face. You sensed it too, didn't you? He asks me. Those fortune cookies we had in that Chinese restaurant 30 years ago. They were special, weren't they? Archie's ruined eye bleeds in reverse and opens slowly as his cells and tissue repair the damage I've caused. It's a crying shame that you never realized you've had wealth and abundance all along. I never wanted your fortune cookie, big brother. Mine was 1,000,000 times better anyway. But, wait. I never told you what my fortune cookie said, did I? At first, Archie's consonants were a gurgled lisp, but they were becoming clearer with every word. I found myself shaking my head. No, he never did tell me what his fortune cookie had said. Archie kissed my third eye with the business end of our grandfather's shotgun. He smiled wider. His front teeth had grown back. It said, "You will live a long, happy, and healthy life." Now, if that's not the best omen in the world, I don't know what is. Story 2. Title, Leftovers. Part I. The Greaves homestead sat at the base of a glacial valley where the tree line dipped and staggered in crooked, snow-heavy steps. It had been Wendell's for 20 years and Marianne's for 15. The structure was nothing special. A 2-story, a frame flanked by a tool shed, a buried propane tank, and the woodshed they replenished together every September. But the land had been chosen with a particular kind of silence in mind. Not the kind you get in city basements or hotel rooms with double-glazed windows. The real kind. The kind that presses itself into your bones and won't leave even when you ask it nicely. They liked it that way. No neighbors. No phone lines. No help coming. By the time the first storm rolled down the ridge that winter, they were already stocked. Root vegetables wrapped in burlap, meat sealed in waxed paper and plastic, broth and lard frozen solid in mason jars. Wendell had rotated the solar batteries twice already. The generator worked fine, though they seldom used it. And in the center of it all, like some old shrine, sat the black cast-iron stewpot that had belonged to Marianne's grandmother, a big-bellied antique with lion feet and a soot-slick lid. It never left the stovetop. Wendell sometimes joked it was her real husband. Not funny, she'd said, every single time. That pot fed 3 generations before me. It knows things. He always chuckled and nodded and let the silence hang, pretending not to wonder what she meant by that. On the day she died, they had been arguing over the ham hocks. Too much salt, she'd said. You know your heart's not what it used to be. I didn't salt it, Wendell replied. You salted it last fall. It's been in the freezer ever since. Well, then, the pot likes it that way. We'll blame it. He rolled his eyes and tried to hide the smile, and she'd whacked his arm with a dish towel before going down to the cellar for more parsnips. That was the last thing she ever said. Wendell heard the fall, but didn't react right away. It was a strange sound, a thud like that of a duffel bag being dropped. He called down once, but received no answer. Then again, louder. His legs didn't want to move, but he made them, carrying the flashlight and their last working lantern. He found her at the bottom of the cellar stairs, one arm twisted beneath her, eyes open and glassy. Blood had bloomed behind her skull and spread like ink into the packed dirt. Her fingers twitched once before going still. Wendell stood there for a long time, the lantern in his left hand painting her features with a fluttering orange glow. He didn't call for help, didn't run, didn't scream. There was no point. The radio was down. The phone had never worked up there. And even if the weather hadn't already dropped 3 feet of snow between them and the nearest ranger outpost, no one was coming for days. He went back up the stairs, picked up the dish towel, and folded it neatly beside the sink. He didn't bury her. Couldn't, really. The ground outside had gone rigid, sealed with ice and dry-packed snow. He wasn't strong enough to cut through it, and the shed only had a post-hole digger. So he wrapped her in a blue tarp, the kind they used to cover the woodpile, and dragged her gently to the far end of the basement, where it stayed coldest. The meat freezer was already full. The storm would keep her. He built a fire. He sat in silence for hours. When his stomach finally reminded him of the time, he rose on autopilot, ladled some broth from the tin by the stove, and lit the gas under the stewpot. It clanked softly as it heated, then began to hum with a slow, oily burble. He spoke to her as it warmed. I used the beef we set aside in October, he said. The one with the good marbling. You said to save it for a special occasion. Outside, the wind made the windows complain. I don't know if this counts, but I think you'd forgive me for that. The pot let out a little hiss. Just moisture escaping. Just steam. He poured in the broth, added carrots, bay leaf, garlic, and half a dried onion. It smelled just like her version, so close he felt his chest tighten. Her favorite wooden spoon, the one with the worn-down handle and the dark stripe from too many burns, sat waiting by the cutting board. He used it like a ritual. That night, he sat at their table and ate 2 full bowls. The taste was right. Uncannily right. But it wasn't just the seasoning, it was the memory. Something about the mouthfeel, the slow unfolding of flavor at the back of his tongue. The way it lingered just beneath the nasal cavity, it felt like her. As though a part of her was sitting there across from him, watching, approving. He even looked once, just a glance over the rim of his bowl. And, of course, no one was there. He chuckled without humor, set down the spoon, and poured himself the last of their blackberry wine. The bottle had dust on it, but the cork had held. "To your stew," he said aloud, raising a glass. The house creaked in the wind. Days passed. Or weeks. The storm never really broke it, just sagged and pressed in heavier. The world outside the windows went gray, then white, then gray again. Wendell kept the fire alive, kept cooking, kept speaking to her, especially when the pot was bubbling. He didn't know why he kept using it. Habit, maybe, or superstition. Or maybe it was because the meals always came out better when he used it. The vegetables softened just right. The meat practically fell apart on the tongue. He stopped trying to vary the recipes after a while. Always the same stew. Always the same bowl. He caught himself speaking to her in second person again. He'd read somewhere that was a sign of complicated grief. But that's what they were, complicated. And grief didn't stop him from being hungry. The meat was still holding up, okay. Still a few sealed cuts in the bottom freezer. Enough to stretch. But the day he pulled out a package he couldn't remember wrapping, something shifted. It was labeled in her handwriting. Thick black marker. No date. Just SAVEFOR SPRINGHIGHFAT. He turned it over in his hands. The wrap was intact. The seal had held. It looked like meat. Dark red. Marbled. Dense. It smelled sweet. He stared at it for a while before placing it on the counter. Then he turned to the pot, already heating, and said, "You sure about this one?" A gust of wind made the stovepipe moan. The pot burbled softly, just as it always did. He unwrapped the cut, didn't look too closely, added garlic, thyme, a splash of vinegar, a little tallow for depth, and stirred. That night, the stew tasted incredible. He wept over the bowl, not because he missed her, not even because he knew something was wrong, but because it felt for just a moment like she had returned. Part I. The pot had weight, and not just in pounds. Wendell felt it every time he lifted the lid, like it resisted, just slightly, as though it had something to say before being opened. It was subtle, mechanical, even, easy to rationalize. But he started noticing it after the fifth stew in a row. Something about the timing, how it never boiled too fast or too slow, how the seasoning always seemed perfectly distributed, no matter how distracted he was during prep. It made him think of those old folk tales Marianne liked to recite when they sat by the fire, about witches who cooked memory into soup, about pots that remembered the souls they'd fed. He hadn't believed in that kind of thing. Still didn't. But he didn't mock her for it, either. That had always been part of their agreement. She could call the pot an heirloom with a soul, and he could call it cast iron and leave it at that. But now she was gone, and the damn thing still hummed at him like it had something left to finish. He told himself it was grief. Then he found the recipe. It had been tucked inside an old recipe binder beneath the flour sack drawer. He'd opened it searching for lentils. What he found instead was an envelope sealed with dried wax Marianne's seal, the one she used for handmade cards and canning labels. It was shaped like a fern frond. The envelope bore no name, no date. Inside were 4 things: a single sheet of thick yellowed paper, a sprig of what looked like dried sage, but sweeter smelling, a tiny photo, black and white, grainy, of an unfamiliar woman stirring a pot in what looked like a cabin, much like theirs. A handwritten note on lined paper, titled Memory Stew. Wendell sat at the table and read the recipe twice. It started off innocent enough: root vegetables, salt, marrow-rich cuts, water from the spring. But the farther he got, the more cryptic it became. The pot remembers if you feed it in order. The broth takes the shape of the one who loved you most. If you speak aloud while stirring, she will listen. If you eat alone, she will return. The last line was scratched in ink that had bled through the page. But beware, she may come hungry. Wendell didn't laugh. He didn't blink. He just folded the paper and set it beside the photo, careful not to smudge the dried leaves still clinging to the envelope. He'd heard her say the phrase, memory stew, once before. Years ago. A joke between her and her niece, Ellie, when Ellie came to visit and brought takeout. He had thought it was nonsense then. Now, he wasn't so sure. The next stew came together differently. Not rushed, not ritualistic, just careful. He followed the recipe to the letter, except for the final line. He didn't speak out loud while stirring. Not at first. The meat that day came from a package labeled ELK21, which should have meant late-season meat from the year before. It had been sealed well, but he didn't remember the kill. And when he cut it open, the scent that greeted him was wrong. Not spoiled, not rancid, but familiar in a way that made his throat tighten. He used it anyway. The pot hissed as the cubes of meat met the fat. The garlic joined soon after. Then carrots. Then potato. Wendell stood at the stove and stirred, the wooden spoon whispering against the iron in soft concentric motions. If you speak aloud while stirring, she will listen. He thought about it, felt stupid, said nothing. Then, halfway through his second turn on the pot, the words slipped out, like someone else had thought them for him. I miss you. The broth trembled. Just a ripple. Could have been the wind in the chimney. He stirred once more. I wish you were here to taste this. The wind stopped. For 1 second, maybe 2, he heard a sigh from the corner of the room. The soft, tired exhale of someone settling into a chair after a long day. He looked over his shoulder. Nothing. Just the old rocking chair beside the stove, still as stone. That night, he dreamt of her. Not the memory version his mind had served up in recent nights, soft focus, incomplete, stitched together from old photographs and better days. No, this was her. Clear, grounded, more detailed than his mind had any right to remember. She was in the kitchen, barefoot in her sleep pants, stirring the pot while humming the same lullaby her grandmother used to sing. Something in Romanian. He didn't know the words, but he knew the tune. He reached for her, could feel the warmth of her skin. She turned and kissed his cheek. Salt, she said. Needs more salt. When he woke, the stew was already bubbling on the stove. The next few days bled together. He cooked, he stirred, he spoke aloud. Sometimes it was just memories, or old sayings, stories she liked to tell, things she used to mutter while dicing onions. But other times, the words felt like they weren't entirely his, as though someone else were threading thoughts into his mouth, mid-sentence. He'd catch himself saying things he didn't mean to, like calling the pot dear, or whispering "there you are" when lifting the lid. He didn't stop. Couldn't. Each time he tasted the stew, her voice grew clearer. She asked questions now. Simple ones. Do you remember the garden? Have you checked the pantry yet? Did you sleep last night? And one evening, as he sat on the couch with the bowl in his lap, her voice asked, "Will you let me stay?" Wendell froze. He didn't answer. But he didn't throw the bowl away either. The pot never burned. Not once. Even when he left it untended for hours. Even when the fire ran too hot. The contents never scorched, never boiled over. And the stew it evolved. Became richer. More nuanced. As though the pot were adjusting the flavor for him personally. Some nights it had a sweetness he couldn't trace. Other times it had a tang of vinegar or wine, despite him not adding either. He told himself he was using old ingredients. He told himself the freezer was mislabeled. He told himself he didn't recognize the meat because she'd stored it, not him. But one afternoon, digging through the lower shelf of the freezer, he found a small plastic package marked FORHIMDOEOINOTOPENUNTILSBRING. It was wrapped in white butcher paper, and the handwriting was hers. The letters were rushed, uneven. Inside was a single cut of meat pink white, pale with fat and strangely lean in the middle. No bone, just flesh. He stood holding it for a long time. When he brought it to the stove, the pot clinked softly as he set it down. Like acknowledgement. He added turnip, parsley, tallow, a dash of dried wine from the cupboard, and stirred. That night, the stew was thicker. He chewed more slowly. The broth was darker. The meat had a silkier texture. Not stringy like venison, not chewy like goat. It flaked apart, like overcooked lamb, but it wasn't lamb. He knew that much. He didn't want to think about it too long. As he ate, she spoke to him, not beside him, not around him, but from within. I never wanted to go. You know that, right? I didn't plan for it to happen that way. I'm sorry. His eyes watered. From heat, maybe. Or something else. He set down the spoon halfway through the bowl and listened. The fireplace crackled behind him. It doesn't have to end, Wendell. He said nothing. Just one more night. Just one more bowl. He looked at the pot. It wasn't boiling. It was waiting. By the second week of the thaw, Wendell had stopped keeping track of the days. The weather outside meant nothing. He went out only when the firewood ran low or the smell of the unshoveled outhouse became too much to bear. Otherwise, he kept to the house, the kitchen, the pot. He'd developed new habits without realizing it, stirring in figure eights instead of circles, speaking to the stew before tasting it, sleeping in his armchair instead of their bed. The chair was closer to the pot, closer to her. He'd stopped thinking of it as madness. Madness didn't bring warmth. It didn't whisper lullabies in the voice of your dead wife. Didn't hum the same half-Romanian tune in perfect pitch each night as the stew came to boil. Something had changed inside the house. He felt it in the walls, in the warping of light just after dusk, in the way her perfume bloomed at the top of the stairs before vanishing again. The stew had become more than food. It was something else now. Bridge, channel, sacrament. He didn't have a word for it, but he knew the rules. If he stirred and spoke, she would listen. If he ate alone, she would return. And return she did. It started with scent. Her favorite lilac and white musk perfume, which she hadn't worn in years, not since they'd gone fully off-grid. He caught its strongest while the stew was on, and lingering faintly for hours after. He found himself holding onto it like a tether, standing still in the hallway just to breathe it in. Then came the sounds. Floorboards creaking in patterns he recognized. The soft click of the kettle lid being placed beside the sink. The faint rustle of pages turning in the other room. He tried, once, to follow the sound. Opened the bedroom door, expecting silence, maybe his own echo. Instead, the radio was playing. It shouldn't have been. It hadn't worked since the battery box died in November, but there it was. WEVV, their old public broadcast station out of Missoula. Faint, warped, grainy. A voice was reading from Little House in the Big Woods, one of her favorites. He didn't change the dial, just sat down and listened, bowl in hand. The voice kept going. When she started answering his questions, he didn't find it strange. "Do you remember when you brought me here the first time?" He'd ask aloud one night. "You tracked mud through the whole cabin," came her reply, warm and amused, right behind his ear. Then blamed it on the dog. "We didn't have a dog. Thought maybe it'd spare me some scolding. Didn't work, did it?" He laughed. Actually laughed. It felt like a memory, but deeper. More immediate. Like the words weren't just remembered, but shared. As though they were speaking from opposite ends of the same breath. He found he could feel her smile sometimes. Not see or hear it, but actually feel it like warmth on his shoulder, like the way her hand used to press his back when she leaned in to taste his cooking. She touched him, in dreams too. Lightly, with intention. And when she said his name, it didn't echo the way dreams usually do. It landed. The stew had grown richer. Every night brought new depth to it, textures and layers he didn't add. Some nights it was savory and soft, others sharp with fermented tang. Once it had an anise-like flavor that turned his stomach and then left him crying like a child without knowing why. He stopped using the pantry entirely. Whatever the stew needed, the pot seemed to find. He'd wake from his chair to the scent of it cooking. The fire still alive. The pot still bubbling. He couldn't remember cutting anything. Couldn't remember adding wood. His arms and hands had the dull ache of recent use. But the meals were always perfect. It was after one of these nights that he caught himself talking with his mouth full. Not just talking, conversing. She was telling him a story about her childhood, about a girl who used to bully her at Sunday school. Wendell responded without thinking, chewing slowly, nodding along. Then he stopped. His spoon hovered midair. The stew was still hot, still steaming. The voice inside his head continued. She pulled my braids and told me Baba's stew smelled like dirt. So I switched her communion wafer with a dried beet. Served her right. Wendell swallowed hard. Mary Ann. Still here. He looked at the pot, then at the bowl, then back at the chair across from him. Where are you? You know where. Her voice was still soft, still hers. But it echoed now. Not in the house. In him. The pressure behind his eyes. The murmuring along his spine. The flicker of memory that wasn't his. He could feel her in his chest, in his gut, in the corners of thought where he usually kept silence. The stew was no longer food. It was her. He tried once not to eat it. Tried to leave the pot cold, to go the day on bread and beans and melted snow. But by dusk, his hands were shaking. His tongue felt too large in his mouth. His joints ached as though he'd been left out in the cold. Her voice whispered all day. Gently, persistently. You're hungry. Why are you doing this? I thought we wanted to be together. He ignored her and sat on the couch, wrapping himself in her old sweater. But by nightfall, the smell of the stew, somehow hot and cooking, even without flame, filled the kitchen again. The pot hissed softly. The lid clinked once. He approached it like a man approaching the scene of his own execution. Did you do this? You did. You always make the best meals. No, It's all right. I know it's hard. You can stop fighting. I'm not mad. I just want to be close. He lifted the lid. Steam bloomed upward, sweet and fatty. He wept as he ate. It happened during the second blackout. The solar batteries had finally drained to nothing, and the wind had brought the power lines down in the valley days ago. He didn't care. He'd stopped using the lights. The fire and the pot were all he needed. He woke up on the kitchen floor, cold, cramping, and barefoot. The stew was cooking. A fresh cut of meat floated in the broth, pink at the edges, ivory in the center. He didn't remember cutting anything or lighting the stove.
His hands were trembling.
His mouth dry. He looked around the room. The freezer door was open, and the tarp from the basement was gone. That's when he noticed the footprints. Wet, red-tinged prints led from the back stairs to the kitchen wide and dragging, like something had been hauled across the floor. The tarp lay half-folded near the pantry door, darkened with fluids that had soaked into the grain. The sharp smell of iron hung in the air. Wendell dropped the spoon. He followed the prints, slowly, not wanting to see but unable to resist. Down the stairs, back into the cellar. The cold hit his lungs like broken glass. He turned on the old battery lantern, low light, flickering, and found what was left of her. The tarp had been unwrapped. Inside, scattered like scraps from a butcher's table, lay ribs, vertebrae, the clean scoop of her pelvis. Her skull, mostly intact, had been propped gently against the wall, her jaw still attached by a string of dried tissue. Her left hand was missing. The right one clutched the edge of a stained recipe card. Wendell stumbled backward, lantern shaking in his grip. The floor beneath him was sticky. It took every ounce of strength not to vomit. He fell to his knees, cried out. Something broke in his chest. You weren't supposed to see me like this. Her voice came not from above, not from behind, but from within. Close, inside his spine, threaded between his ribs. He clutched his head. God. Marianne, what have I done? You didn't do anything wrong. You missed me. I missed you too. This is wrong. This is sick. You're the one who started cooking. I just came home. I ate you. Silence. Then, gently, not all of me. I'm still here. He looked at the bones, then at his hands. His palms were stained pink, fingernails caked with blackened stew. He had done this. He had fed himself her memory, her essence, her flesh. And he still wanted more. Don't leave me again, she said. He closed his eyes and felt her press against him from the inside. He didn't know if it was possession or madness. Didn't care anymore. Either way, he wasn't alone. The next day, the radio crackled. Sundown Ridge Station. Come in. This is Mason Harrow at District Base. Anyone there? Wendell stared at it for a long time before lifting the receiver. His voice sounded strange, slightly higher, smooth at the edges. This is Greaves. Cabins intact. Roads passable by foot. Static. Then, Jesus, Wendell, you're alive. We've got a team headed in today. You've got visitors. Wendell looked toward the stove. The pot burbled softly. He turned the radio off. Behind his teeth, something smiled. Part IV. The radio sat dead now. He'd turned it off after speaking with Ranger Harrow and hadn't touched it since. Once the signal died again in the storm's wake, he didn't bother to re-establish contact. What would he have said, anyway? Come quickly. I've been eating my dead wife, and she started talking from inside my brain. No. Better to wait. Better to let things finish. The pot was already simmering when he woke the next morning, despite the fire being little more than glowing embers. The smell crept upstairs before the light did rich, meaty, laced with something floral and honey-sweet beneath the fat. He knew what it meant. She was feeding herself now. No more denial. No more pretending the meat was old venison, or mislabeled elk, or something from before her death. No more letting the pot speak for him. He'd eaten her, slowly, reverently. Not in some monstrous frenzy, not in madness or malice, but one bowl at a time, telling himself it was memory, communion, nostalgia. But now it was hunger, and he couldn't tell whose it was anymore. He stopped using mirrors. Every time he saw his face, it looked different. Not dramatically, he wasn't seeing someone else staring back. But the eyes sat wrong. The mouth moved too easily, too expressively. His shoulders curved in when he walked, like hers used to. His hands lingered on objects, fingertips pressing into cloth and wood like they were savoring textures. He started humming, not consciously. Tune just leaked out of him. Old Romanian verses Marianne used to whisper while kneading dough or grinding herbs. He didn't know the lyrics, but his voice carried them all the same. He stopped noticing when the transitions happened. One moment he'd be seated by the fire, mind blank, watching the snow. The next he'd be stirring the pot, ladling stew, chewing softly while the warmth climbed up through his bones and into his skull. Sometimes it was her doing the chewing. He could feel it. He tried, once, to stop. After finding what was left of her in the cellar, he'd sworn, genuinely sworn, to let the stew rot, to let the pot go cold. He unplugged the propane line, boarded the stove shut with a crossbar of pine, sat shaking in the bedroom for hours, starving, aching, wrapped in every blanket they owned. The pain came first. Not just hunger, but withdrawal, limbs seizing, stomach twisting in dry spasms. Then the voice, "You're hurting yourself. Don't do this to us. You promised." "I didn't promise anything," he whispered into the dark. "You didn't have to. I know you. I am you now." That last part was said not aloud, but through him, a thought not fully formed, an echo reverberating in his bones. She was more than just present now. She was inhabiting, migrating. That night, he blacked out. When he awoke, the kitchen was warm again. The boards were gone. The stove was lit, and the pot was full. He found himself staring into the mirror above the sink a few mornings later, searching for some last fragment of who he used to be. His mouth smiled without permission. It wasn't wide, just a soft little tilt, the way she used to do when she was about to tell a lie. He spoke. "Don't I look good, Wendell?" His lips moved. The voice was his, but the tone, the cadence hers. He stepped back, bumped into the counter. "Stop it." No response. "I said stop." Another smile. "You're scared," she whispered through his throat. "That's all right. I was scared too. But now we're together. This isn't what I wanted. It's what I needed." He gripped the edge of the sink, knuckles white. "You're stealing me." "No, I'm finishing you." And the truth of it hit hard. She wasn't killing him. She was overwriting, erasing, adopting his posture, his tone, his memories. Each bowl had brought her closer. Each bite had hollowed him out. He was nothing more than her transitional form now, her chrysalis. And the shell was almost shed. 3 days before the Rangers arrived, Wendell walked into the basement for the last time. Not because he hoped to bury her, or even to make peace, but because something was missing. He had started to forget her voice. Her true voice, the one from their life together. The one that said his name with warmth, that hummed while chopping carrots, that read the almanac aloud by the fire. He remembered the inflection, but not the pitch. He stood in the cellar beside her bones and realized he didn't recognize the person they belonged to. The hand had gone missing. The skull had been turned inward, jaw removed. And at the foot of the mess, the stew pot lid rested, clean and gleaming. Not in the kitchen. Not on the stove. Here, he hadn't brought it down. But it was waiting. He knelt beside it, touched the iron. It was warm. "You see now," she said inside his chest. "Yes, you understand." "I do." "Then you know what comes next." He did. He lifted the lid. It hissed, not with heat, but with breath. Her breath. His breath. The same breath. The rescue came sooner than expected. Wendell, what remained of him, stood in the snow with one hand raised as the snowmobiles approached, their engines growling like distant wolves. His boots were wet, but he didn't feel it. His fingers shook slightly, but not from cold. "Sergeant." Harrow was first to dismount. "Jesus, Wendell," he said, pulling off his goggles. "You look like hell." "I feel wonderful," Wendell replied, and meant it. His voice was smooth, measured, his posture straight, eyes calm. But the rest of the team saw what they needed to see: weeks of unwashed clothing, hollow cheeks, wild hair. A man surviving on the edge. They had no reason to suspect otherwise. Not yet. Harrow clapped him on the back and guided him toward the snowmobile. "You'll need a medic. Maybe a shrink. But you're alive, man. You made it." Wendell smiled. He didn't speak. The real horror came later, when they searched the cabin. When they found the cellar, opened the freezer, and cataloged the remains. Some of the Rangers vomited. Others went quiet. It was unmistakable. Marianne had not only died in that house, she'd been dismantled in it. Methodically, cooked and consumed. The pot tested positive for human tissue. The notebooks, especially the memory stew recipe, matched her handwriting. And Wendell's prints were on everything. Everything. They arrested him at the field clinic, where he was undergoing a psychiatric evaluation. He didn't resist, didn't speak either. Not for days. When Dr. Lena Moreau finally got him to talk, it was slow going. He remembered nothing of the stew, nothing of the cellar. He described long periods of feeling, watched, of dreams that spilled into waking. He said he had mourned his wife. Then he paused and corrected himself. "I mourned our wife." Dr. Moreau wrote it off as trauma-induced identity fracture, dissociative psychosis, cannibalistic fugue. But one night, As she packed her things after a long session, he spoke again, with the same smile, the same calm. She wanted to live. Dr. Morrow looked up from her bag. I'm sorry. She didn't want to go. And I can't blame her. He leaned forward, resting his chin on one palm. You should have tasted her stew. The trial never happened. Wendell was found unfit to stand on grounds of extreme psychological collapse. Committed indefinitely to a forensic psychiatric hospital in eastern Montana. They gave him a cell with a window. He asked for books, recipes, and paper to write on. He never raised his voice, never resisted medication. But the nurses talked behind closed doors about the way he walked, hips just slightly off-center, like he was wearing someone else's bones. How he touched his face too often, like he was still getting used to it. How he'd stand at the sink for minutes at a time, just watching his reflection, smiling that same quiet smile. One nurse swore he hummed lullabies in a language she didn't recognize. And once, just once, he whispered something from the mirror's edge. I told him I'd stay. Part V. The name on the hospital intake form was Wendell James Greaves. Male. Age 58. No known history of psychosis. Survivor of prolonged isolation during the 2024 deep freeze event in the Black Pine region. Suspected involvement in the death and cannibalization of his wife, Marianne Greaves. The man who signed the form did so with a steady hand. But the signature didn't match the samples from 5 years earlier. Not exactly. The letters had curves now. An almost cursive flourish in the GIA, a lean on the double U that suggested someone used to writing grocery lists in loops and margins. When the nurse asked if he was feeling all right, he smiled and said, I'm getting used to things. Time passed differently inside the hospital. There was structure, of course, meal times, head counts, group therapy, but it all bled together like paint in warm water. The man in room 11 adjusted quickly. Too quickly, some thought. He adapted to the medications, reported no side effects. He exercised daily, participated, spoke politely to the staff. Too polite. Not crazy, they whispered. Off. The way he watched people. The way he folded towels. The way he stared at the pot in the communal kitchen as though he was waiting for it to say something. One morning, a staff member caught him pressing his cheek against the refrigerator door, whispering, Too cold for sour broth. You'll curdle if you rush it. He looked up, blinking, and said, Oh, sorry. Habit. No one asked what he meant. In private sessions, Dr. Morrow tried to reach Wendell what little was left of him. But every time she pushed, she met someone else. The man in the chair knew things he shouldn't. Recipes passed down from old-world kitchens, ones not published anywhere. He described herbs she couldn't identify, rattled off Slavic phrases in perfect cadence. Once, he corrected her pronunciation of borscht and cited 3 regional variations by temperature and pickling length. I'm not Wendell, he told her once. I'm just what was left after Wendell was finished. She asked what that meant. I'm the one who made the stew. His eyes never left hers. But Wendell served it. The remains of Marianne Greaves were buried in a shared grave near Blackwater Hollow. A memorial stone was erected with both their names. No family came to claim the body. No one wanted the pot. It sat for weeks in the evidence locker of the county sheriff's department. Then, without explanation, the clerk on duty reported it missing. No signs of forced entry. No video footage. Just an empty shelf. The room smelled faintly of time for 3 days afterward. Back in room 11, Wendell began keeping a journal. The staff found it one day, tucked neatly beneath his mattress. It wasn't filled with confessions or regrets. It was a cookbook, titled in careful handwriting, Things Worth Remembering. Each page contained a memory, a moment, a taste. Every one of them began with, "I made this for you," followed by a description of the occasion, a late autumn dinner, an anniversary, a night she'd had a bad dream. Each memory was tied to a dish, and each dish ended with the same line, "You came back to me that night." The final page was blank, save for a single phrase at the bottom. But at what cost? The months turned. Seasonal staff rotated in and out. But Wendell remained, still polite, still present, still humming lullabies under his breath when he thought no one was listening. He never mentioned Marianne again, not by name. But during one particularly quiet session, Dr. Moreau asked him what he thought about redemption. He looked at his hands, familiar now, though still slightly alien in the fingers, and said, "Redemption's a stew you only get to make once." She asked him to explain. He looked up, smiled with someone else's mouth, and said, "You have to start with love and then ruin it." Sometimes, in the middle of the night, he dreams of himself. Not Wendell. Herself. The way she used to be, taller, lighter, filled with laughter and wine. Dancing in the kitchen, stirring the pot with her wooden spoon, flicking broth at Wendell when he teased her. She misses that woman, misses the warmth of her own hands, the hair she could tie up in a knot, the voice that sounded like her grandmother's when she said bedtime prayers. Now all of that is behind glass and bone and other people's voices. A prison, one she built. Wendell's life is over, and hers is a sentence. But she's breathing. She's alive. And for someone who once feared the quiet of the grave, that's enough. For now.